Right, Austin, welcome to Brussels. Congratulations on the new career. You just switched from BBC Radio 1 Extra to Spotify, so congrats.
Thank you very much. I mean, I spent 10 years at the BBC learning some amazing ways in which to connect with audiences, specifically young audiences, and I hope to use some of the things that I learned at BBC Radio 1 and BBC Radio 1 Extra to deliver on a global level to younger people and to young audiences and fans of popular music and contemporary music on Spotify.
So you gave a presentation today, and one of the things that that I saw in there was skip rate, which is a really interesting metric, I think. And I think every song you have in a playlist has a skip rate between 30 and 70%. That is huge.
In one particular playlist, that is the case. I mean, you can have a skip rate from 0 to 100 and everything in between. On that particular playlist, which was a playlist that was aimed at a very specific demographic, that is the skip rate that can range between 30 and 70%. And it's very interesting to see the skip rate, but it has to be taken in context of everything else around it. You can't just look at a skip rate and decide that, oh, because 30 or 40% of people have skipped this record, that it's not a good record. There can be some reasons for it besides people not liking the record. So we always have to look at it within context.
Skipping is something you do out of passion, so the combination of passion and the data you can pull from that is something really powerful, I think.
I would agree, yeah, it's definitely a measure of passion. It's one of the metrics that we use to measure passion. There are some other metrics as well, some I sort of can't talk about and some I can. But definitely the skip rate is a good indication of passion. It's a good indication of sort of liking or disliking a record potentially. And that is something that we look at quite closely alongside some of the other metrics that we can see.
There's a lot of talk about the death of radio and the life of Spotify, if you will, but I don't think we are enemies. I hope you agree on that.
I definitely agree. I think that the news of radio's demise has been greatly exaggerated. There are still a huge amount of people, both in the UK and across the rest of the globe, that still consume radio on a daily basis, including millions of young people. I think what we're seeing is that in terms of music consumption and music discovery, streaming services are here to stay, and that will always be a part of a young person's life moving forward. So how does radio fit into the new ecosystem? I think that's the bigger question. Radio won't die, but they have a new role in the world.
How do you think we can collaborate, for example, on targeting those young audiences? Because we're losing them, sort of, and you're winning them, sort of, but how do we collaborate?
Well, I think that the future of Spotify isn't just a list of tracks in an order that you can hear. I think that the future of Spotify potentially is a much more richer experience than that. In the same way that I think the future of radio isn't just talking track, and radio as an industry has innovated when it comes to video, when it comes to online technology, etc. And I think that there are things that streaming services can learn from radio, and there are things that radio can learn from streaming services. And I can definitely see a time in the future where you potentially have playlists that are owned and operated by Spotify, but perhaps there are some radio brands that are involved in that. And already we have partnerships with the BBC, and I know that out in Sweden there's a partnership with a radio station out there where there are some playlists that are owned and operated either by the radio brand or by Spotify, but it's in partnership with the radio organisation. And I think in the future, certainly stations like M&M and Studio Brussels have the potential to work with Spotify to deliver music to audiences in new and interesting ways.
One last question. Do you miss radio already?
When it comes to radio, I joined the BBC when I was 19 years old, and I grew up at the BBC, and the BBC will always be my spiritual home. I love Spotify. Spotify is the future of music consumption. I'm all about breaking new artists on a global level, and Spotify allows me to do that. Spotify is my new home, so I'll always love the BBC, and of course I'll always miss my colleagues at the BBC, but Spotify is the future.
Thank you.